So how did you get from the rock and roll station heading over to the Suns?
Well, my main interest always was in sports. And I had done Arizona State University football and basketball. And, you know, I had jumped around from a few stations from time to time, depending on how things were going. But my goal was to stay in sports. And after doing many things that you mentioned, I also did the Roadrunners, the old Western Hockey League team, for 5 years on both radio and TV. And as a matter of fact, when the Suns came to the Valley and got an NBA franchise in 1968, I was doing the Roadrunner hockey. And surprisingly enough, the hockey outgrew the Suns in those first few years. And then 45 years ago, Jerry Colangelo came to me and offered me the job with the Suns, and it's been a great ride, no question about it.
Oh, you've had some fantastic games. And I'll interrupt with this. How many people have watched a national televised Suns game, and somebody else is calling the game, so you shut the sound off, turn the radio on? Yeah, so listen, I know, we do that.
It's permissible, as we say. It's permissible.
Yeah, well, we do in my household. So you came with the Suns, man. The early years are some golden times.
It was, you know, as pro sports has changed, as everything else has, and all our games weren't on TV. In fact, we had a very small package the first few years. I think we had maybe 10, 12, up to 15 games on TV. We did those. And then eventually, as the years went by, we started doing more and more television games. And of course, now everything is on TV. And I did the TV for, I think, 35 years. And now the last 10, I do the games on radio. Kind of like that. You don't have to wear a tie. And no one talks in your ear all night, Ian, so you just get to enjoy the game. But, and of course, probably two of the most famous things that happened to the Suns, and the first was in 1976 when they went all the way to the NBA Finals, played the Boston Celtics, and were involved in the first ever triple overtime game in the NBA Finals. And it was an unbelievable experience. And then 1993, back in the finals again, this time against the Chicago Bulls, and another triple overtime game. Fortunately, the Suns are the only team that has had those triple overtime games. I've been fortunate enough to do them both, and particularly after the game in 1976, because I did that game obviously on our Suns radio network. I did it on the old Mutual radio network. I did it on Armed Forces Radio, and I can tell you for years I heard from people who had listened to that triple overtime game, and many stories. Even here in Phoenix, some of the supermarkets, when they were checking people out, stopped everything, turned the radio up in the supermarket, and people just didn't listen to those three overtimes.
Yeah, I remember the 76 game. That's also the year I got married.
I hope you remember that,
I
Ian.
remember
Right,
the game
okay.
too. But to show it, isn't that where they were out of timeouts, and Paul Silas was calling a timeout, and the officials didn't recognize him. He was right.
Well,
if they would have called it, it would
yes.
have been a penalty shot.
That's right, and the Suns would have won.
Right.
And then in 1993, a guy named John Paxson hit a three-pointer with a minute left in the game that killed that. So it was some last-second things that just didn't go the way of the Suns that prevented them from getting the championships. But they've been there twice, and certainly looking in that direction again, obviously.
Yeah. In the earlier the Suns, when we got to play L.A. in the first playoffs, that would have been what, Connie Hawkins?
Yes. Yeah, Connie Hawkins and Dick Van Arsdale, and that group. And you know, a lot of people forget that was the second year of the Suns, and they made the playoffs in only their second year, and actually led the Lakers. And the Lakers had that unbelievable team: Jerry West, Wilt Chamberlain, Happy Hairston, on and on and on. And the Suns had a 3-game lead, and then Jimmy Fox, who was the starting center, sprained an ankle and couldn't play, and the Lakers came back and won.
Right.
But the Suns, I think, really established themselves, and I think after that 1976 game, the Suns really established themselves having real fans here in the Valley, because the excitement was something extra special. I'll never forget, the Suns won the deciding game up in San Francisco against the Golden State Warriors, who had won the championship the year before with Rick Barry, their great all-star player. And we came back to Sky Harbor Airport, and they actually had shut the airport down. There were so many people there greeting the team. The enthusiasm and the excitement in Phoenix was really unforgettable.
Yeah, I can see why you want to do the sports.
Right.
Stay with that. Stay out of
Yeah.
politics.
Probably a
You
good
don't get
idea.
the applause. You don't get any of that.
Right.
I know you had a lot of favorite players, but you're going to have to talk about some of them.
Well, you know, it's a lot of people ask me who was your favorite player. I don't know if I really had a favorite player. We've been so fortunate through the years. The Suns have had so many players, not only great on the court, but off the court. You mentioned Connie Hawkins earlier. He's in the Basketball Hall of Fame. He certainly did so much to bring pro basketball here. And then Dick Van Arsdale, who was the original Sun, and then when he retired, spent 15 years with me as my partner on the broadcast. Well, you just have to run down almost the era of players. I mean, Kevin Johnson, of course, was one of the Suns' great players. Walter Davis, Charles Barkley, Steve Nash. You can just go on and on. We have been very fortunate to have high caliber players that have been great favorites of Suns fans, no question about it.
Yeah, no, I know it's a favorite sport for those of us in Arizona. We followed them for years and years, along with you. And we're lucky because you live in Glendale, and the rest of Arizona doesn't know that. That's why we're
Well,
here,
and
right here in Glendale.
I have to say this, Ian, and a lot of people ask me, but you know, I'm from a small town, farm town in Iowa, and I love the feeling in Glendale. And I have to say this, and I've said it to many workers, the civil services in Glendale have kept me here through the years. Police, fire, everything is so terrific. I like the downtown square atmosphere. There's something special about Glendale, and I'm happy to be a resident, no question about it.
We're lucky to have you. I started out, Sharon and I, our first business, we bought the Exxon at 51st and Northern. I'd worked there in high school. And my employees, I get these young boys working for me out of high school, they always come running over to me and show me a credit card they stamped off. Al McCoy. Al McCoy, or his wife was in. Al McCoy's wife is coming. I said, driving a brand new Thunderbird. Yeah, that's Al's wife. And you've had a relationship with our downtown Ford dealership for years.
Yes, Sanderson Ford has been family with me. I knew Don Sanderson and, of course, David Kimberly, now the president, owner of Sanderson Ford. I kid him because I knew him. What do they call them? Yard boys when they moved the cars around? He was lot boys. He was in high school. Yeah. So Sanderson Ford, a vital part of Glendale, and really family owned and operated, which you can't say about a lot of businesses anymore. And my relationship with Sanderson Ford's been terrific.
No, I buy a lot of parts from them, and when they put me on hold, it's you I'm listening
Right.
to every day. I get a commercial from you. Maybe we'll go back to music, because before you leave tonight, we're going to have you play the piano.
Yeah, I'll see if I know a tune, maybe, right?
What are some of your favorite bands from the big band era?
Well, I think probably the all-time greatest band ever was the Count Basie Band, which was certainly my favorite of all time. I loved the Stan Kenton Band. I loved Harry James, particularly in his later years. Woody Herman and the fourth herd of Woody Herman was always one of my favorites. Obviously, as you can tell, I was a jazz buff and always had great admiration for the players that presented it. Unfortunately, I feel kind of sorry and remiss for young people today that they missed that era, because it was such a great era of music with the big bands and with jazz, and I'm so happy I was able to be a part of it. Not a great jazz player, I'm certainly an intermission piano player, but I certainly enjoyed it.
Yeah, you talked about the bands, because you had live bands everywhere.
Oh yes.
You'd go to an Elks Club, there's a live band playing. We mentioned when I went to Glendale High, we always had a live band playing for our high school dances. And
well, one of the great things about growing up in the Midwest is, for a musician, there were so many places to play. Ballrooms in every city and clubs, and they called them territory bands. And that's what I played with for years. We traveled all over the Midwest, Iowa, the Dakotas, Minnesota, Illinois, Missouri, and they were basically bands with 3 brass, 3 saxes, 3 rhythm, and a girl singer, and we traveled all over the Midwest. And they were called territory bands because that's exactly what they were. But the musicianship on those bands was so terrific. And there were so many good musicians in the Midwest at that time. You could look at any of the named bands, including Stan Kenton and Les Brown, Ray Anthony, all had guys from Iowa, because there were so many places to play to really appreciate the talent that the individual musicians had. So it was great.
Nothing else to do in Iowa but learn to
That's
play an
right.
instrument.
Well, that and pick corn.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I'd have played the piano also.
Right.
Yeah. As long as they had a trombone in those bands, that's what holds them together.
Oh,
God's
that's right.
instrument. I don't know if you knew that.
Well, I knew that, and I was around some great trombone players. No question about it. Who were some of your favorite trombone players outside of Tommy Dorsey?
Listen, you know what? I was with a group of friends, and my wife was there, and they asked me, if you could play with any band of theirs,
Right.
who would you play with? And nobody got it right. They said, well, Chicago, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, all
Yep.
the kind of modern rock
Sure.
bands. And my sister did. She goes, oh, it's Glenn Miller. Oh, you're right, it's
Yeah.
Glenn Miller.
Well, he was a trombone player.
Right.
A lot of people don't know that, but of course Jack Teagarden, one of the best, but some outstanding, Irby Green going into more modern times, and J.J. Johnson. I've always loved the trombone. It's a great instrument. You do a great job with it, I might
Yeah,
mention.
you're very kind. The guy that writes out most of my music here, Jay Maines, he doesn't think so. I play in the Mike Kravitz's band, but we have a great band when we get together and play.
Well, that's terrific. That's terrific.
We're going to be playing at a big chamber event coming up here in
Well,
Glendale.
good.
And we'll make sure you come.
We'll look forward to that,
And come,
obviously.